I never thought my own son would abandon me in a foreign country with no money and no way home. But that's exactly what he did. Sorry, ma'am. This ticket was canceled yesterday. At first, I thought it was a mistake. It had to be. My son Daniel booked everything for this trip. He insisted, said I needed a real break after years of looking after everyone else. He promised he'd handle every detail. But when I tried my credit card to buy a new ticket, it was declined. My stomach tightened. I tried my debit card. Declined again. It felt like the world tipped sideways. Could you check again? I whispered to the agent, but she was already waving the next passenger forward. I stepped back from the counter, my hands trembling as I pulled out my phone to call Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. Daniel, I said, panic flooding my voice. There's some mistake. The flight, my ticket's gone, and my bank card isn't working. Can you? He cut me off. It's not a mistake, Mom. The words didn't register. Not at first. What do you mean? You're better off there, he said flatly. The house isn't yours anymore anyway. Just stay. The air left my lungs in one sharp gasp. Daniel, what are you talking about? What do you mean the house isn't mine? I've taken care of everything. You'll understand later. Don't call again. And then he hung up. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I just stood there in the middle of the airport, clutching my phone so tight my knuckles went white. Around me, people moved like a river, laughing, dragging suitcases, hugging loved ones. It felt like I'd slipped out of the world entirely. I sank onto a hard plastic bench, staring at nothing. My throat burned, but no sound came out. I was stranded in a country where I didn't even speak the language. No money, no family, no way home. That's when I knew I wasn't just stranded. I'd been erased. Trapped in a foreign airport, I fought to hold myself together as the truth about Daniel's betrayal sank in. The cold tile floor dug into my knees as I crouched by the charging station, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. The screen flashed, 3% battery. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I had to call the bank. I had to fix this. There had to be a mistake. After what felt like forever on hold, a man's voice answered. Calm, polished, detached. Yes, ma'am, I see the transfers here. They began 6 weeks ago. Transfers? What transfers? My voice cracked. Your savings and checking accounts were consolidated into a joint account authorized under your name and Daniel Carter's. Do you recognize that name? I nearly dropped the phone. Of course I do. He's my son. But I never gave him access to... Ma'am, the paperwork shows your signature. I froze. My signature? Yes. We can email you a copy. My chest felt like it was caving in. Don't bother, I whispered, ending the call. The sound of laughter erupted nearby as a group of tourists wheeled bright suitcases past me. I felt like I was underwater, unable to breathe, unable to move. Daniel had gutted my accounts. Everything my husband and I had worked for, all of it gone. I pressed my palm to my forehead, trying to steady my thoughts. Think. Just think. I needed Wi-Fi. I needed help. A cafe across from the gate was half empty. I stumbled over, hoping they wouldn't throw me out before I got what I needed. Do you have free internet? I asked the cashier. His eyes flicked over me, my rumpled blouse, the sweat beading on my temples, and he hesitated before sliding over a slip of paper with the password. Thank you, I muttered, barely above a whisper. I connected and tried calling Daniel. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I tried again. This time, Rebecca answered. Well, she's still alive. My stomach turned. Rebecca, please. I just spoke to the bank. What's happening? Why would Daniel? She cut me off with a sharp laugh. He said you'd call. He said you'd make a scene. Stop embarrassing yourself, Colleen. Go find a little apartment somewhere sunny and forget about the house. It's not yours anymore. Click. The line went dead. For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. The house. My house. Gone? A sob clawed its way up my throat, but I forced it down. Pull yourself together, I murmured under my breath. I pulled the charger tighter into the outlet. The phone blinked up to 5%. Excuse me? I jumped. An older woman stood nearby, a kind face peering at me with quiet concern. "You look lost," she said gently, offering me a bottle of water. I took it with shaking hands. "Thank you. Do you have anyone who can help you?" My lips parted, but no sound came. Finally, I whispered, "I thought I did." She didn't press, just sat beside me. The screen lit up with a text notification. "Daniel, stop trying. It's over. Stay where you are. It's better for everyone." My fingers clenched so tight around the phone, I thought it might snap. If I ever made it back home, I'd make them regret underestimating me. The woman watched me for a long moment, her dark eyes soft but steady. "Come on," she said finally. "You can't stay here all night. It's not safe." I hesitated. Part of me screamed to refuse. Pride, fear, habit, but I was too tired to argue. Her name was Marina. She led me to an old blue sedan parked in the drop-off zone. "I'm not going far," she said. "My apartment's small, but you can sleep on the couch tonight." As we drove, I stared out the window at streets I didn't recognize, lit by harsh yellow lamps. "You're not from here," she said gently. "My son brought me here for a vacation," I replied, my voice hollow. "He said he'd take care of everything, but then he left me." Marina's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Left you?" "He canceled my return ticket, drained my bank accounts, and now he says, the house isn't mine anymore." She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she murmured, "That's monstrous." At her apartment, Marina gave me a blanket and a steaming mug of tea. "My brother's a lawyer back home," she said softly. "Maybe he can help when you get back. Do you have anything you could pawn for cash? Enough for a ticket?" My hand instinctively went to my ring finger. The gold band there felt heavier than ever. The next morning, I stood outside a pawn shop with my wedding ring clutched in my fist. Harold had given it to me on our 10th anniversary. He'd saved for months to afford it. "I'll never take it off," I'd told him once, but now I did. The pawn clerk didn't even look at me, as he slid a few crumpled bills across the counter. It was barely enough for food and a cheap SIM card. I walked out, feeling hollow. Marina insisted on helping me buy a prepaid phone. "Call your son again," she said. "Make him explain." I did. This time, Rebecca answered. "Oh, for God's sake, still trying? You're persistent for someone with no options." "Rebecca, please, why are you doing this?" "Because Daniel's tired of cleaning up after you," she said sharply. "You've had your time. It's ours now. The house, the money, everything. You can't just—" "Oh, we already did. You were never coming back, Colleen. We made sure of it." "Don't call again." Click. The call cut like a blade across my chest. I staggered out of the alleyway, clutching the phone like it could tether me to the life I'd just lost. They don't expect me to survive, I thought. They're counting on me fading quietly. But I wasn't going to fade. If I could just get home, I'd make them regret underestimating me. Marina sat across from me at her kitchen table, a phone pressed to her ear, her brow furrowed. "Yes, Javier. She needs to get home immediately," she said in quick, hushed Spanish. "Can you help?" I clutched the chipped mug of tea in my hands, gripping it so tightly my knuckles ached. "She's in danger of losing everything." "No, she doesn't have access to funds. Daniel drained it all." I stared at the wood grain in the table, my thoughts spinning. Rebecca's words still echoed in my head. "We made sure you were never coming back." They hadn't just stranded me. They'd tried to erase me. Marina hung up, her expression softening. "He'll call back in an hour. My brother knows people who can arrange an emergency loan. It won't be easy, but it's a start." I exhaled shakily. "Why are you helping me?" She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Because I can't stand seeing a good woman destroyed by her own child." 2 hours later, Marina's phone rang. She answered on speaker. "Senora Carter?" A man's voice, low and steady. "This is Javier Castillo. Marina told me everything. I've contacted a colleague who will wire you funds for a one-way ticket home." A one-way ticket. The words made my heart pound. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Javier replied. Once you're back, you'll need to move carefully. If your son has taken legal action, every step counts. By evening, I was boarding a flight with nothing but a plastic bag, holding a single change of clothes and my phone. The roar of the engines was deafening as the plane lifted off. I stared out the window, gripping the armrest as memories flooded in. Daniel, 12 years old, promising to buy Mom a big house someday. Daniel, at 23, sobbing on my shoulder when Rebecca left him for 6 months. And then Daniel last week, his voice cold and flat. The house isn't yours anymore. I didn't recognize that boy anymore. We landed just after dawn. As I stepped off the plane, my legs trembled. The airport smelled like stale coffee and bleach, but it was home. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to give them warning. Marina's brother had sent me a rideshare code, enough to get me to my neighborhood. My stomach churned as the car turned onto my street. There it was, my house, my sanctuary for 30 years, except it wasn't mine anymore. Daniel's sleek black SUV sat in the driveway, polished to a shine. Through the front window, I could see silhouettes moving. A flash of laughter. Rebecca. I stepped out of the car, heart hammering. My key slid into the lock. It didn't turn. Changed. I tried again, twisting harder. The metal scraped uselessly against the mechanism. From inside, music played faintly. A family video. My voice. Laughing. I froze. They were in there. Using my furniture, my plates, my memories. Living my life as if I had never existed. I stood frozen on the porch, staring at the door I'd walked through thousands of times. The same welcome mat, the same brass handle, but now it felt like a stranger's house. My own laughter floated out through the cracked window, tinny and distorted. They were playing the old family video, the one Daniel used to beg for as a boy, his little voice squealing, "Again, Mommy, play it again." I raised my hand and knocked. The sound echoed like a gunshot in my ears. For a moment, nothing. Then the sound of footsteps. The door swung open. Daniel stood there in pressed slacks and a crisp white shirt. He looked at me like I was a delivery woman holding the wrong package. "Mom." His mouth curved into a smirk. "You're back." His words were calm, but his eyes flashed with something sharp, something almost amused. "Give me my keys," I said, my voice low. Rebecca appeared behind him, wearing my cashmere sweater, the one Harold bought me on our last Christmas together. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, her lips curling. "This is awkward," she said. "We weren't expecting company." I stepped forward. "This is my house. Open the door and let me in." Daniel let out a soft chuckle. "Your house? It's not yours anymore, Mom. You signed it over, remember?" My stomach dropped. "I never. Of course you did." Rebecca's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Daniel handled all the paperwork. It's all legal." I turned to the neighbors across the street. Mrs. Whitman stood on her porch, watering flowers, watching. "Please," I called out. "You've known me for 20 years. Tell them." She froze, then looked down at her begonias. No one moved. No one wanted to get involved. "Leave, Mom," Daniel said softly. "You don't belong here anymore." My knees threatened to give way, but I forced myself to stand taller. "This is theft," I said. "You've stolen from me. I want my home back." Rebecca pulled out her phone. "You want us to call the police?" she said, her tone saccharine. "Because we will." "You should," I snapped. "Let them see how you're throwing your own mother out on the street." 10 minutes later, they did. The squad car rolled up quietly. A young officer stepped out, adjusting his belt as he approached. "Ma'am, we got a call about a trespasser." I looked at him in disbelief. "Trespasser? This is my house." He glanced at Daniel. "Sir, do you own this property?" Daniel nodded solemnly, holding up a folder of documents I couldn't see. "Deeds in my name, officer." "Ma'am?" The officer's eyes softened briefly. "If you don't leave now, we'll have to remove you." My breath hitched. "Are you arresting me for trying to go home?" "It's the law," the officer said quietly. "Please, let's not make this worse." Behind him, Rebecca was filming on her phone. "Say hi, Mom," she called with a cruel smile. "This'll make a great TikTok." I stumbled down the sidewalk, my legs shaking so badly I thought I'd collapse. The squad car's lights still flashed faintly behind me, painting the neighborhood in cold red and blue. I didn't dare look back. The air felt heavier than lead. This street had been my sanctuary for 30 years. I'd planted flowers in those yards, lent sugar to those neighbors, babysat their children. Now they wouldn't even meet my eyes. A neon vacancy sign blinked ahead like a cruel invitation. The motel smelled of bleach and cigarette smoke. The clerk didn't bother hiding his suspicion as he slid me a key card. I locked myself in the tiny room and sank onto the creaking bed. My phone lay in my lap, but I couldn't bring myself to call Marina. How could I explain that my son had thrown me out like trash, that the police had treated me like an intruder in my own home? A sharp knock on the door startled me. "Housekeeping," a voice called. My heart hammered. For a moment I thought Daniel had found me already. It was just a woman in a faded uniform, holding fresh towels. "Thanks," I murmured, my voice hoarse. As the door clicked shut, I caught my reflection in the cracked mirror. My blouse was wrinkled, my hair a mess, my face pale and drawn. I didn't even recognize the woman staring back. The next morning, I forced myself to call Marina. "Colleen, are you safe?" she asked immediately. I don't know," I whispered. Her brother Javier was on the line within minutes. "I've reviewed your case," he said, his tone brisk but kind. "This is bad. They've moved aggressively, and if they sell the house, you may never recover it." My throat tightened. "So I'm too late?" "Not necessarily," he said. "But we need someone who knows how to fight fire with fire." That afternoon, I met Mr. Alvarez in the back corner of a coffee shop. He was older than I expected, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Marina told me what happened," he said, sliding a legal pad across the table. "They're counting on you being too humiliated to push back. That's how these things work." I nodded silently. "Did you ever sign anything?" he asked. "No," I said firmly. "I trusted my son, but I never signed the house over. Never. Then we may have a chance." He pulled out a thin folder. Inside were copies of property records, emails, and utility bills, all bearing my name except the latest ones. Rebecca's name was everywhere now. Alvarez tapped a page. "This looks forged. If I can prove that, we can freeze the assets before they move the money offshore." "Offshore?" I echoed. He leaned forward. "They've probably already planned it. People like your son don't steal a house unless they're ready to cash in fast." My stomach churned. "What do we do?" I asked. "We set a trap," Alvarez said calmly. Alvarez's words replayed in my head as I sat in the corner booth, staring into a cup of bitter coffee. "If you move too fast, they'll liquidate the assets and vanish. We need to trap them mid-act. Are you ready to fight dirty?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." By the next morning, Alvarez had filed an emergency motion to freeze the sale of my house. "It's temporary," he warned over the phone. "A judge could lift it if we don't bring hard evidence. We have to move smart, not loud." That advice became my mantra: smart, not loud. I started by watching. From across the street, hidden in the shadow of an old oak tree, I saw Daniel's black SUV pull into my driveway. The trunk popped open, and Rebecca stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, her arms full of shopping bags. A delivery truck arrived moments later. Men carried in boxes, labeled luxury appliances. My throat tightened as I watched them haul out my furniture. The couch Harold and I bought together, the rocking chair where I'd cradled Daniel as a baby. They didn't donate it. They tossed it like garbage into the truck, Alvarez called that afternoon. "They're hemorrhaging money," he said. "Car payments, vacations, home renovations. It's like they think the cash is endless." "I want to see everything," I told him, and he delivered. Screenshots of Rebecca's social media showed her bragging about spa days and our dream home finally coming together. Daniel's accounts were quieter, no photos, no posts. But Alvarez had his ways. Wire transfers. a new account under Rebecca's maiden name, purchases just below reporting thresholds. They were sloppy in their greed. The next day, I followed Rebecca to a high-end boutique downtown. She strode inside in my fur-lined coat, another piece she hadn't earned, and handed over my sapphire necklace to be cleaned, my mother's necklace. I pressed my back to the cold brick wall outside the shop and fought the scream clawing up my throat. Alvarez texted later that evening. We got the freeze order. They can't sell or refinance without triggering a court alert, but they don't know yet. I stared at his words, gripping the burner phone so tightly it creaked. They're going to explode, I said aloud. They will, Alvarez agreed when I called. And when they do, that's when we strike. 2 days later, Daniel's number lit up my phone. I almost didn't answer, but my thumb moved before I could stop it. Mom, he said flatly, what the hell are you doing? Protecting what's mine? You think you've won? His voice rose, sharp enough to cut glass. This isn't over. You're going to regret crossing me. No, Daniel, I said softly. You're going to regret underestimating me. For the first time, it was his turn to hang up. Later that night, as I sat in the motel room staring at the peeling wallpaper, my burner phone vibrated with an unknown number. I answered. A distorted voice whispered, "Back off, or you'll regret this." My fingers went cold. "Who is this?" I demanded. But the line went dead. The burner phone sat on the nightstand, its screen still black from the last call. "Back off, or you'll regret this." The voice had been low, almost mechanical, but the malice in it felt unmistakably real. For a long time, I didn't move. My reflection in the motel mirror stared back at me. Hollow eyes, clenched jaw, a woman pushed so far past her breaking point she couldn't even recognize herself anymore. By morning, Alvarez was waiting for me at his office. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said, motioning me to a chair. "I didn't," I admitted. "Someone called last night. They want me to stop. They're trying to rattle you," he said flatly. "It's a common tactic when people know they're about to lose." I swallowed hard. "Are we close?" He nodded slowly. "Closer than they realize." Alvarez pushed a folder across the desk. Inside were bank statements, transaction records, and screenshots. "Rebecca opened a new account under her maiden name last year," he explained. "It's offshore, likely in anticipation of moving stolen funds out of reach. Everything they took from you is sitting right there." I stared at the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Gone. A memory flashed like a wound reopening. Harold's voice, warm and steady as he reviewed our savings plan years ago. "This money is our safety net, Colleen. No one will touch it but us." And yet here I was, staring at evidence that my son and his wife had gutted it without a second thought, my hands curled into fists. "They weren't just trying to take the house," I murmured. "They wanted to erase me completely." Alvarez's expression didn't change. "And they still will, if we don't act fast." That afternoon, we went to the police, sitting in a stark white office under buzzing fluorescent lights. I had to recount everything: how Daniel pressured me to sign papers after Harold's funeral, how he convinced me to hand over control of the accounts. Each word felt like acid in my throat. The officer across the desk kept his face neutral as he typed, but I saw it in his eyes, the mix of pity and quiet judgment reserved for women who trusted too much. When I finished, Alvarez handed over the evidence file. "This is financial abuse," he said firmly. "Fraud, identity theft. We're asking for an investigation." As we left the precinct, my phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. "You're playing with fire. Stop before you get burned." "Should I change my number?" I asked Alvarez. "No," he said. "Let them think you're scared. It'll make their mistakes louder." "Do you think it's Daniel sending these?" "Maybe. Or Rebecca. Or someone they've pulled in to do their dirty work." His jaw tightened. "They're desperate. That's good for us." That night, I sat alone in the motel room, staring at the ceiling. I thought of the years I spent working double shifts to put Daniel through college, the nights I stayed up sewing his Halloween costumes by hand. And now he wanted me gone. dead to him. But if they thought I was going to disappear quietly, they were wrong. The next morning, Alvarez called. "I've filed for an emergency hearing," he said. "We're going to freeze that offshore account before they drain it. And if the judge says no, then we go public." Public? Press, social media, community boards, whatever it takes. People like Daniel and Rebecca don't survive exposure. But first, let's see if the law works in our favor. I stared at the cracked ceiling of the motel room as Alvarez's words echoed in my head. If they wanted war, they just got one. I couldn't tell if the trembling in my hands came from fear or fury. For weeks, I'd been clawing my way out of the hole Daniel and Rebecca dug for me, watching from the shadows as they tore my life apart, selling pieces of me like I was nothing. But now, it was my turn. By mid-morning, Alvarez called again. "The judge has scheduled an emergency hearing for next week," he said briskly. "That gives us 5 days to build an airtight case." 5 days? I asked. "We don't need 5 weeks. We've got the paper trail, the witness statements, the offshore account logs, and we're going to hit them harder than they ever imagined." His voice was calm, but I could feel the weight behind it. "They've underestimated you this entire time. That ends now." I spent the next day recording a video testimony with Alvarez's assistant. It felt strange, sitting in a bare room under harsh studio lights, staring straight into a camera lens. "Start from the beginning," she said softly. So I did. The words came haltingly at first. How Daniel had insisted on managing my finances after Harold died, how he pressured me into signing documents I never fully understood. But as I spoke, the shame began to peel away, replaced by something stronger. By the time I reached the part where they drained my accounts and changed the locks on my house, my voice didn't shake anymore. "What is love without respect?" I asked the camera, my tone sharper now. "What kind of son destroys his own mother just to feel powerful?" The assistant wiped her eyes. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from an old friend. "Colleen, I don't know if you've seen this, but Rebecca is posting about you online." My stomach turned to stone. I opened the link. Rebecca's face filled the screen, her voice syrupy sweet as she spoke to the camera. "My poor husband's mother. She's not well. We've tried so hard to take care of her, but she refuses help. She's confused, angry. I'm afraid she's becoming dangerous." The caption read, "When dementia makes family tough decisions necessary, pray for us." Hundreds of comments poured in, sending prayers. "You're such a good daughter-in-law." It's heartbreaking when elderly parents turn on their kids. I gripped the edge of the bed so hard my knuckles turned white. She wasn't just stealing my house. She was stealing my reputation, Alvarez called minutes later. "She's trying to poison the well before the hearing," he said. "Classic manipulation." "Can she get away with this?" I asked. "Not if we expose her first." The next day, Alvarez filed for an order barring Daniel and Rebecca from selling the house or moving funds until the case concluded. By noon, a courier had delivered the papers to their door. I imagined Rebecca's smug smile evaporating as she tore the envelope open. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a notification. It was a text from Daniel. "You've gone too far. Don't think you're winning. You're only making it worse for yourself." I stared at the words, my chest tight but my mind strangely clear. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me erased. But they were about to see just how loud I could be. The morning after Daniel's text, I sat with Alvarez in a quiet office, the curtains drawn tight against the world. "You've done everything right," he said, flipping through a thick file. "Now it's my turn to hit back." "Hit back how?" I asked. He tapped a page showing my signature on the deed transfer. "This isn't your handwriting. I know it, and soon a judge will too." He slid over a business card. "Grace Linton, forensic document examiner. She's testified in dozens of forgery cases. If she agrees to help, we can rip their story apart." That afternoon, I met Grace in her tiny office, lined with magnifying lamps and stacks of folders. She studied the copies of my supposed signature for nearly an hour, her eyes narrowing. "This is sloppy work," she said finally. "The pressure on the strokes is uneven, and certain letter forms don't match yours. I'm confident I can prove someone traced and altered your writing." "Will that be enough?" I asked. "It's a start," Grace said, "but I'll need you strong for the hearing. You're the most powerful witness in this case." But I wasn't strong. By the time I left Grace's office, my chest felt tight and my legs heavy. At the motel, I barely made it to the bed before collapsing. The next thing I knew, I was staring at harsh white lights and the steady beep of a heart monitor. A nurse hovered over me. "You fainted," she said gently. "Exhaustion and stress. You're lucky someone found you." I blinked at the IV in my arm. "You're not safe to leave yet." Safe. The word felt foreign now. Late that night, the door creaked open. Daniel stepped inside. He carried a bouquet of pale lilies and wore the same soft smile he used as a boy when he wanted something. "Mom," he said quietly, "you scared me. You shouldn't be pushing yourself like this." I turned my head away. "You've already taken everything," I whispered. "Why are you here?" "To talk," he said, pulling up a chair. "Maybe we can settle this without lawyers. I don't want you to be hurt." His tone was warm, but his eyes darted to the corner of the room where my purse sat, stuffed with legal documents. "You came to see what I know," I said. The mask slipped. His lips pressed into a thin line. "You're making this harder than it has to be, Mom. Just sign over the rest. You'll have enough to live on. You don't need all that property at your age." Before I could answer, the nurse entered. "Visiting hours are over," she said firmly. Daniel stood, his expression tightening. "This isn't over," he murmured as he placed the flowers on my bedside table. When he left, I stared at the bouquet. A faint rustle came from within the petals. My hand trembled as I reached in and pulled out a folded slip of paper. It read, "This is your final warning. Stop fighting, or next time, we won't be so gentle." My blood ran cold. The note in the bouquet still burned in my mind as Alvarez helped me from the car. "Don't let them see your fear," he said quietly. "If they sense weakness, they'll pounce." I nodded, clutching my handbag like a shield. Inside it were copies of every forged document, every bank transfer, and the report from Grace Linton proving my signature had been faked. This was it. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and nerves. Daniel sat at the defendant's table, immaculate in a tailored suit. Rebecca sat beside him, scrolling her phone as though none of this mattered. When they saw me walk in, Daniel's smirk faltered. "You weren't supposed to be here," he hissed as I passed. I didn't answer. I took my seat, spine straight, hands steady. The proceedings began with their lawyer, a sleek man with a voice like honey, painting me as confused, unstable, and easily overwhelmed by financial matters. Rebecca dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "We've tried everything to help her," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "She's just not well anymore." The gallery murmured. Then Alvarez stood, his voice sliced through the air like a blade. "This isn't about confusion or memory loss. This is about greed and betrayal." He motioned to the screen behind him. "Here is evidence of a forged signature transferring property without consent. Here are wire transfers moving funds into accounts controlled solely by the defendants. And here," he gestured to Grace, who nodded confidently from her seat, "is expert testimony that these documents are fraudulent." When it was my turn to speak, the room went still. I took a breath and looked straight at the judge. "My husband and I built that house with our hands," I said. "I raised my son in it. I trusted him to protect it, and me. Instead, he stole everything and left me stranded in a country where I didn't speak the language." My voice didn't break. I am not senile. I am not confused. I am a mother who made the mistake of believing her child's love was unconditional. Rebecca's lawyer objected loudly. "She's emotionally manipulating the court." The judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Continue, Mrs. Carter." Alvarez leaned in as I returned to my seat. "You just won the room," he whispered. Rebecca's facade cracked first. "This wasn't even my idea," she snapped as their lawyer tried to calm her. "He's the one who said she wouldn't fight back." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You idiot," he muttered under his breath. The judge banged the gavel. "I've heard enough," she said sharply. This court rules in favor of Colleen Carter. I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't let them see it. The courtroom emptied around me, but I couldn't move. The gavel's echo still rang in my ears. The house and assets are restored. Any further interference will result in criminal charges. It should have felt like justice. It didn't. Alvarez touched my shoulder gently. "You did it," he murmured. "It's over." But it wasn't over. Not with Daniel still sitting there, hands clenched into fists, staring at me like I was the enemy. Rebecca whispered something to him, her voice sharp and urgent. He shook her off, his face twisted in rage. As I stepped into the sunlight outside the courthouse, the air felt heavy, electric. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones thrust forward. "Mrs. Carter, how does it feel to win? Do you have anything to say to your son?" I kept walking. My heels clicked against the marble as I gripped the railing, willing my knees not to buckle. Then I heard him. "You ruined my life." The words cracked like a whip across the courtyard. Daniel was shoving past the reporters, his suit jacket wrinkled, his hair disheveled. "I was supposed to inherit everything," he screamed. Rebecca hung back, her face pale. "Daniel, stop," she hissed. He didn't stop. "You selfish old witch," he roared. "You couldn't just let go, could you? You had to drag me through the mud." "My own mother," I froze. For a moment, the world went quiet. The cameras clicked. Reporters murmured. Passers-by stared. I turned slowly to face him. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "I am your mother, and all you had to do was love me enough not to destroy me." He faltered, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "You inherited my love," I continued. "That wasn't enough for you?" His face crumpled, not in remorse, but in pure, unfiltered rage. Before he could respond, 2 officers stepped forward. "Sir, you need to calm down," one said firmly. Daniel spun on them, his fists clenched. "Get your hands off me," he shouted. "You're violating a restraining order," the officer replied. "Come quietly, or we'll add resisting arrest to the charges." Rebecca stepped forward suddenly. "I'm done," she said coldly, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "You wanted this war, Daniel. You lost. I'm not going down with you." For the first time, Daniel looked truly alone. His shoulders sagged as the officers cuffed his wrists. "Mom," he spat as they led him away. "This isn't over. I'll make you pay for this." I didn't flinch. As the squad car pulled away, Rebecca lingered. She met my eyes for a long moment. "You're stronger than I thought," she said, "but you'll regret losing him." I didn't reply. When the crowd finally dispersed, I stood there on the courthouse steps, the weight of years pressing down on me. The house was mine again. The money was mine again. But my son? I didn't know if I'd ever get him back. That evening, I walked through the front door of my home for the first time in months. The air smelled faintly of lavender and bleach. Someone had scrubbed every surface clean, but traces of them lingered. Rebecca's perfume in the hallway, Daniel's cologne in the master bedroom. I moved from room to room, opening windows, letting the old air out. By the time I reached the kitchen, I was crying, not from sadness, not entirely, from relief. I placed my hand on the marble countertop, the one Harold and I installed together 25 years ago. "This house survived," I whispered. "And so did I."